Yes, you are seeing this correctly. Even though I have yet to review X-Men The Last Stand or X-Men First Class, I got to see X-Men Apocalypse early, so hey, you're getting an early review from me. X-Men Apocalypse is the third film in this new trilogy of X-Men movies. It's the 8th film overall, or 9 if you want to count Deadpool. And it's probably going to be the final X-Men movie that Bryan Singer will be directing. And of course, he's the guy who did the first 2 X-Men movies and Days of Future Past. This movie focuses on the supposed first mutant, Apocalypse, played here by Oscar Isaac, who has woken up in the year 1983 after thousands of years of sleeping. So he recruits 4 mutants, Archangel, Storm, Psylocke, and Magneto, to help him make the world a better place by, you guessed it, destroying it. So it's up to the X-Men to stop Apocalypse and his 4 horsemen and save the world from total destruction. Now, the X-Men movies have been on a very bumpy road. I really enjoyed the first 2 X-Men movies a lot, though I don't love them. 3 is not good, and X-Men Origins Wolverine is god-awful. But then I thought they picked up their pace with X-Men First Class, The Wolverine, which, hey, that wasn't a great movie, but it was good. It was fun. And my favorite X-Men movie so far, X-Men Days of Future Past, which marked the return of Bryan Singer to the franchise and basically corrected the wrongs that X-Men 3 and X-Men Origins Wolverine committed. So with all that said, I was really looking forward to X-Men Apocalypse because, I mean, I really loved X-Men Days of Future Past, and I was curious to see how Bryan Singer would basically wrap up this new trilogy of X-Men movies, and to see if it's a good follow-up to Days of Future Past. And how do you top X-Men Days of Future Past? Not with X-Men Apocalypse. Unfortunately, as much as I'd really love to say X-Men Apocalypse was a great movie, I just can't. I'm trying to be as fair as I can with this review, but X-Men Apocalypse isn't really bad, but it's not great either. When compared to First Class and Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse feels very generic. It just feels like a giant step down from the past 2 movies, which isn't always a bad thing. I would be fine with a standard superhero movie where heroes must defeat the villain. But again, if you were to compare what this movie had to follow, it is kind of inexcusable. And there were a few parts in this movie where I didn't really care what was going on, sadly. And I feel one of the big problems with this movie was concerning the villain. Apocalypse is played by Oscar Isaac, who's one of my favorite actors from stuff like Inside Llewyn Davis, Ex Machina, and Star Wars The Force Awakens. He is a tremendous actor, and I felt like his performance as Apocalypse was pretty underwhelming. I mean, I don't know much about Apocalypse in the comics, so if you could comment below and tell me what Apocalypse is about, then go for it. But solely judging the character from this movie, I thought he was really underwritten. He kind of reminded me a lot of Ronan from Guardians of the Galaxy. Not just in the sense that they kind of look alike, but in the sense that his motivation is not very thorough. He's not that interesting of a villain, and I think one of the things that also hurts Apocalypse is that Oscar Isaac seems to be having trouble acting through all that makeup. As I've said before, the man is a terrific actor, but here it just seems like the makeup is really heavy and restricting on his performance, so that was very disappointing. With a cool looking character like Apocalypse and a great actor like Oscar Isaac, it is disappointing that this was just wasted potential. And speaking of wasted, there are a couple of characters in this movie that really I was looking forward to seeing, but once they were in the movie, they just kind of felt like throwaway characters. Like, they ultimately didn't do anything. 2 of the characters that I was really looking forward to was Psylocke and Jubilee, 2 fan-favorite X-Men, or at least I know Jubilee is, but I'm not sure about Psylocke. Maybe I just like Psylocke a lot. But Psylocke is really there just to be one of the 4 henchmen to Apocalypse. She ultimately doesn't do anything. I mean, Olivia Munn has proven herself on occasion to be a good actress, but she just ultimately didn't have anything to do. It's like they put her in this movie and went, hey, look, it's Psylocke. And yes, she does look like her comic book counterpart, but I don't know, like, half the time I kind of forgot she was in this movie. Same thing goes for Jubilee. Jubilee really does nothing in this movie. She's just there for fan recognition, and that was truly and utterly disappointing. But one other character I felt like they should not have thrown into the mix at all was Moira McTaggart, who's played by Rose Byrne from X-Men First Class. In First Class, her character had a purpose. She kind of acted as our gateway back into the world of mutants after Brett Ratner and Gavin Hood kind of destroyed that franchise. So she works there, and she has a lot more to do. But here, I feel like her only purpose is to bounce off exposition, because she really doesn't do a whole lot once you get further into the movie. It's like, why did you bring her back to begin with? I mean, it's good to see that Rose Byrne's getting a paycheck, but come on, if you're going to bring this character back, do something with her. If you're wondering about the Wolverine cameo in this movie...
Well, you've been busy.
We had a little help.
It's just there to basically right one more wrong about X-Men Origins Wolverine, basically how he got out of the Weapon X chambers, which is much different than X-Men Origins Wolverine, thank God. And one thing I really like about that sequence is that even though we know Wolverine is in the Weapon X labs, the way they build up his appearance was actually pretty scary. It was the first time since the first X-Men movie where I actually got scared of Wolverine. The build up to his reveal in this movie was very well done. And some of the action scenes are really well done and fun to watch, but I felt like the final battle as a whole, it went on for a little too long and it just felt kind of generic. At times I was bored, actually. But let's actually segue into the stuff that I did like, because even though I seem to be really harsh on this movie, there are a lot of things that I did like. I just wish the movie as a whole was much better. All the performances are really good, even with those who are kind of wasted. Once again, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender as Xavier and Magneto respectively are very good. There's even a whole thing involving Magneto near the beginning of the movie. That was compelling. I was really engaged with what was going on. I won't say what it is, but it was one of the few times in this movie that really got me emotional. Once again, Quicksilver is back in this movie, and he actually is more of a character this time, because as much as I loved him in Days of Future Past, I think all of us did, he was mainly there as a plot device, basically an excuse to get us from one thing to the other. Here, he actually has more of a role, and we get to see more of a character within Quicksilver. His big scene in the movie, while not as good as the one in Days of Future Past, is very well done. And I also really enjoyed the younger actors who played characters like Cyclops, Storm, and Nightcrawler. I really liked Sophie Turner as Jean Grey. She's basically a younger Jean Grey who's trying to get control of her powers, and sometimes she'll be hesitant to use them. It's pretty much the same character arc that Jean Grey went through in X2, and while a repeat of a plot point from an earlier movie would annoy me, I thought it worked here because you gotta take into account Days of Future Past kind of rewrote history. Sort of like the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek, where from that point on in the past, anything could happen. And I felt like it was much more appropriate to have Jean Grey hesitant about her powers at this young age. And I thought Sophie Turner did a really good job in that role. So good that I really would kind of like to see these younger actors come back in future X-Men movies. Like, get rid of Wolverine. We don't need Wolverine this time around. And just have it be more around the younger Jean Grey, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, and Storm. I think that would be a really fun movie to watch. Maybe like a Young Mutants movie. But, I mean, we'll see what happens. And one last thing I really like is how the younger mutants look at Mystique, who's once again played by Jennifer Lawrence, after her actions at the end of Days of Future Past. And it's one of the things I really liked about Mystique through this whole trilogy. They just don't make her somebody's right-hand woman. She actually has a character, and Jennifer Lawrence, once again, does a really good job. In fact, I've always preferred Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique over Katniss any day of the week. So to wrap things up, X-Men Apocalypse has some really good moments that I really like, but then it has other things that just feel completely wasted. So again, a giant step down from the past two movies, and one thing that doesn't really help, well, two things, and they kind of feed into each other. There's a scene in the movie where the younger mutants go to see Return of the Jedi, and Jean Grey says something along the lines of, well, we all know that the third movie's always the worst in the series, and I'm like, oh, that's actually not gonna sit well with you guys, because A, this is the weakest of this current X-Men trilogy, and B, Captain America Civil War just came out, which proved that if you really work hard, the third movie could possibly be the best in the series, like Captain America Civil War was. So that's one thing that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, is that they put in that joke. But if I were to give this a rating, I would say it's good, but it's not great. Like I said, it's a big step down from the past two movies. But there are a lot of things that I really like. It's much better than X-Men 3 by a long shot. But compared to First Class and Days of Future Past, this is just kind of a letdown. Not bad, but not great either. So that's my review for X-Men Apocalypse. The movie doesn't come out until a couple of weeks, so I hope you enjoyed this review. I can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts on the movie when you see it, when it opens. Like, comment, subscribe, share me with your friends. Don't forget to check out my official website, and you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, SoundCloud, Periscope, and Rift.tv. Tune in this Wednesday as I continue my review of the older X-Men movies with X-Men The Last Stand. And until then, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you, there's only one.